The Royal Shakespeare Company stages over 30 plays a year in Stratford, London and on tour. These use 150 actors in 500 different roles. Each character has to have a costume specially designed. Behind the scenes, the RSC can make anything possible. Beaten-up characters, creatures from another world or nuns from this one, and real blood and guts theatrical effects.
Designer in the costume-making process is trying really to help all the people working for you to produce the best work that fits to your vision, really. So you're giving them as much information as you can, as much sort of help, but also, if you've got any sense, you're relying on their skills rather than sort of telling you how to do things.
The costume drawings illustrate period and shape. Costumes and set together create the visual style of the production. Once agreed, they are presented to the wardrobe departments.
The idea for this production is...
The purpose of the costume presentation is to familiarise the workshop with the basic theme of the show. It doesn't actually, you're not going into great detail about exact finishes or exact fabrics.
But the main thing is that the Duke belongs to the old sort of Austro-Hungarian, Habsburgy, Russian sort of feel.
It's more trying to show people the scope of what you're trying to do, get them aware of how much work's involved, how many costumes, what sort of style.
Type figure, something like that. Green long gown, and we're going for a big hat.
You hopefully inspire them with your vision of the play, that it's something that is accessible to them and is perhaps something new and interesting that they hadn't done before.
Before the costumes can be made, all the materials and accessories must be chosen, a crucial part of the costume supervisor's job.
Tom and I sat down, went through the designs, and went through the stock at the RSC. So we were able to fill in a few gaps from the samples, but we're still missing quite a few fabrics, so I need to keep sampling. And I need to take Tom into the shops as well to have a look. You can only see so much from a little sample, so he needs to see it on the roll, really.
Choosing the fabrics is in many ways the most daunting part of the process, really. You've begun with blank paper, you've done some sketches, you think you've chosen a colour scheme, or you think you've got some ideas of colour and texture to go through the piece. You then have to go and try and fit it to the world that's out there.
Down another 2 tones, do you think?
Yeah, it depends what a tone is, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, define that.
Define tone.
Soho's where all the costume supervisors end up. There's a big selection of fabrics in each shop, and they're used to theatre people, theatre and TV, so they're quite flexible and helpful. So you get unusual fabrics.
Right, if you stay there, I quite like the...
it's not quite...
Is it gonna...
You've then got to work out fabrics that will do the job, have the right weight to make a jacket or trousers. And often that's where you work closely with the wardrobe supervisor, because they've got a much better idea normally about what you really need, rather than your fantasy of sort of going, oh, that's a lovely fabric, but they're going, well, that will fall apart, or if you wash it, it won't work.
Like a gabardine or even a Venetian.
Yep.
I've got a budget and I have to stay within that budget, and it's a big show, so there's a lot to consider. I think in an ideal world you would think more about the period and the colours, but I also have to recognise that the costumes are on stage for about 2 years, so they've got to last and they've got to be actor-proof, they've got to be pretty tough. That's Angelo.
Yeah, that's Angelo's one.
Great.
I think that would be very nice. It's got that sort of slightly...
Yeah, that's our man.
Period texture, I think.
That's the one.
Yeah,
fine.
Okay.
If you can't find anything that is exactly right for what you've envisaged, then there is always the possibility of dyeing things.
But also it'll stain nicely.
The costumes should look like clothes authentic to the period and the character. The skills of the dyeing and distressing department in Stratford achieve this transformation.
When the supervisors come back from shopping in London, they'll have a whole range of lots of nonsense fabrics and think, oh no, and we can dip them in different dyes just to discover what they go best in. So usually we're quite prepared. This is just the calico, so it's we know it quite well. You get to know all the fabrics and think, oh, that one again. That's some are good and some don't behave themselves.
As well as the obvious fabrics, we can do feathers, we can do shoes, we'll dye the shoes, zips, pieces of lace, any piece of haberdashery. I've actually dyed wigs. I've done a fair amount of hair and nylon wigs for the last production of Measure for Measure.
You just get to know the colours like a painter would. So, you know, it's a tweak of 53 with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green to knock the pink out, and you're away, really. You know, like, well, hey, go and have a cup of tea.
It's got to appear lived in. It's got to just look as though it's a bit sort of worn, and so I'm just roughing it up a bit, but not too much. It hasn't got to go completely, but it's got to register on the main house stage. Once I've done the singeing, I rough it up a little bit with a little bit of sandpaper.
We're often asked about why we don't take old garments and wreck them like this, you know, go out and buy them instead of actually having them made. And the problem with an old garment is the fabric is actually rotten, so it's not going to last your run. At the moment, what we're doing is working into sort of new fabric, so all this is nice and strong. And when I've actually ripped up some of this or destroyed a piece of seam, then we'll put a stitch in and hold it so that it stays as is, and will last a run of 2 years, despite looking as if, you know, it's on its absolute last legs, which is actually what the job's about. You know, it's all illusion.
To get to this grey will take us an hour or so. It all depends. There's a lot of luck involved in it as well. But sometimes if they choose a heavy moleskin, and it's usually a dark colour as well, so it can take days. We cut little samples off the end. We pull it all out and cut a piece off and iron it dry to see how it's moving. And then you add a bit more dye, then you throw it all back in and go on. So we read magazines and drink tea.
The costume-making process includes fittings, when the actors are given the opportunity to try on their costumes at an early stage. There may be several fittings before every detail is agreed and the costume can be completed.
It's the producer doing it, I won't get to
The first thing you do is actually to make the thing fit. One of the difficulties in doing costumes from scratch is to end up making them look like clothes. You know, that most people wear things that, you know, are a little too tight or a bit too big, or the trousers aren't a perfect length and all that sort of stuff. So you have to strike a balance there.
Really be aware of what's going
you
on.
don't want that.
No, I think the length was right as it was.
I've just had a fitting for the corset and the basis of the dress, but there are lots of little bits that have to be added. The decoration, the jewellery that's discussed.
They come with something that's cut, the basic shape, but all of it is, you can move the sleeves, you know, move the belt. It's sort of quite adjustable, and then what happens is they come the next time with your idea and then you try it on again, because everything is made to fit you here, which is fantastic.
If you're playing a smart character, you know, wearing a high-collared shirt will immediately make you carry your head at a different angle. It looks much more confident, arrogant, so you don't feel in any way false when you're trying to do your best with the words or to play the character. So I think for an actor, costume is one of the most fundamental parts of your performance.
There are many more parts for men than for women in Shakespeare, so the larger of the two wardrobe departments is the men's.
Well, they'll come in with a design like this. We had a great discussion on this one. I mean, this is a simple design. We have a conversation about, do you really want it like that, or should we put some more flair into it? And it just evolves like that. They know what they want, basically. And if you think something's going to look a bit funny or won't quite work, or you just explain. Well, this one is for an actor called Robert Bannister, who's playing Vincentio, the Duke. And this is his mantra when he leaves the city and goes in for a disguise. So I'm just cutting this out for him now, and then a maker will make it up for a fitting.
Once the fittings are agreed, the two experienced teams of makers take the material prepared by the cutters and stitch the costumes together. Compared to the men's department, the ladies' wardrobe produces very different shapes and uses other specialist skills.
Well, quite often what happens is we'll have a good talk with a designer so that we can get an idea of what he wants, and we'll go through any bits of information that he's got from various books, or sometimes it's a film. We'll get a film that they might have had inspiration from. The majority of us all have reference books which are very handy to refer to. Then I'll start making a pattern, and I will make a pattern from the stand, so I'll get a piece of calico. Quite often we won't make it in the calico for the person, but in this case for Claire, because it was quite a specific, she wanted to look like, sort of very nun-like, because she's going to be the bride of Christ, but she still wanted to look feminine, not too nun-like.
So the costumes help a great deal. I mean, she's a nun to begin with. She's a novice of the Poor St Clare's, which is quite a strict order. So the costume has been vital. What we're trying to do is find a costume that tells that story and also tells the story of somebody who's actually quite attractive, and that is one of the causes of her being abused by authority.
Well, this is the hip pad to go underneath the petticoat to give her a better shape. And we had a fitting with just a thin pad, but it wasn't enough to kick out the back of the dress, so we've ended up putting a smaller pad on. I'm just putting it on the stand now and putting the petticoat over the top to check the hem and everything, which is what we tend to do a lot, putting on stands and making sure everything looks right, looks level. And basically, once that's right, we can then start with a proper dress and things.
Sir, believe this. I had rather give my body than my soul